Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm Mike Luke, joined by Brian Ethridge, co-owner of Sikkim365.com. Brian, how you doing, my guy?
Doing great. Just a little hot here in Texas right now. So
I was going to say, well, you know what? In Tucson, we can certainly identify with you right now. How hot is it in Texas right now?
I think we're around 103 right now. So it's a heat index in the 110 range. So it's,
all right. I was going to say we're already conference mates because we understand each other's pain right there. So
exactly. We had rain. We had rain last night, though, so I don't know how that happened, but it did somehow.
I was going to say we've had a lot of monsoons here as well. So, all right, wanted to have you on. Obviously, going to be Big 12 conference mates. Baylor is Baylor's been one of the top 5 programs in the country when you can combine basketball and football over the past 10 years, and I don't think there's really any question about that. So, wanted to get your take on that. Talk a little bit about how we got here, but first. What was your take on just kind of how the Pac-12 basically imploded, some of the reporting, and how we are to this point at this point, Brian?
It was really interesting. I mean, I haven't talked to you yet, right? This is our first conversation. We talked and met, and we chatted a little, through DM. But I talked to Jason. I've talked to other people behind the scenes, and it was really interesting. About a year ago, Jason and I actually crossed paths on a source. And I didn't know Jason existed at the time. He didn't know I existed. So I just reached out to him and I said, hey, is this the same person?
Right.
And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. So I said, I'm going to back off that person because I'm not going to bug him at that point, but I knew that person. I had a longer relationship with him. We have a long relationship with people inside the Big 12. And I had other people out in the Pac-12 as well that I knew. So we were able to use those sources and also in the media industry. And it was really an interesting time for, we covered that for a year. And people, I don't know how many times I was told I was crazy. I know Jason had it. I know you had it. We saw that. How many times we got refuted by people in the Pac-12 area, like the Bay Area, and specifically one person. And then then we started getting personally attacked from certain people out there on Twitter, saying you're full of it. The
12 and on crowd.
Yeah. And I'm like, come on, this is not political, but somebody tried to make it political. And this is not a political thing. This is a survival. And the Big 12 have been through it so many years that we sort of had done this. So, back to 2010, 2011, we covered it back then with, A&M in Missouri, and then the Clemson, Florida State flirtation with the Big 12 that never happened. And then as Colorado left in 12, and then Utah joined back then as well. So we, kept those same people and, same resources, and just stayed in touch with them. And as it broke down, we just saw it more and more. And then people in the media, like a Fox, ESPN, NBC, CBS, the people that we know in that industry were just dumbfounded on who it would be that would partner up with the Pac-12. Right. And in the end, we knew that wasn't going to happen. And then I had a guy reach out to me who is a very trusted source on the Tuesday before Colorado broke and said, it's done. And then he wrote me on Monday after that, and he goes, Arizona's next. And I said, okay. And so we reported on it Tuesday, did a little more digging, more sourcing, and put that out on our board. We didn't put that out wide for the world. That was not, something that, we didn't want to come out there. That's Jason's story, and we let Jason run with it. And, I talked to him and a little bit about it behind the scenes, and a couple other guys that cover, the whole landscape of expansion. And it's really interesting to watch, behind the scenes and be able to feed that to our group. And we had a lot of people from Iowa State and Arizona, and come to our message board, take the trial and read it. And
it's interesting how these things play out, because I was told a little over a year ago by somebody here that would definitely know, who said, listen, at the end of the day, and I told Shear this from day one, and he told me, he said, listen, no matter what's reported, the money isn't going to be there and the visibility is not going to be there. Those are the two things that matter here, money and visibility. And this person never wavered. And so, like, when you start hearing these nonsense reports about how everybody's united, unity statements, all of this, and I would get a text from him about once a week, and he would say, it's all nonsense. It's all coming from two to three sources that want everything, Oregon State, Washington State, to stay together because obviously they don't have any other options. And lo and behold, when we get here, the deal wasn't good enough. I mean, you got a $23 million deal that is 100% streaming with no linear option whatsoever. And it just goes to show you, too, that sometimes if you just cut through all the nonsense, some things make sense, some things don't make sense. This Pac-12 deal never made any sense if you cared to look just past just kind of the surface level reporting there.
It was interesting to watch the, I guess, the rebuttals of that. Right. And Sam Bradshaw, who's one of our contributors on our website, he and I sat down. We did 30-minute videos explaining the windows. I mean, right. We went diving deep into that and showing how the windows just were not there to be paid after you brought BYU in and after UCLA and USC left, the windows just shrunk and it was just a geographic issue for the Pac-12 at that point. And right. Now with the four corner schools, and it's weird calling them four corner schools because New Mexico's not in there. So it's
right.
But you get
the gist,
into the four corners. Yeah. But it got nicknamed that and it stuck. And watching those windows then open up if the Big 12 got them and what ESPN and Fox will pay for. And I think that at the very end, with Oregon and Washington taking the bullet for
right.
killing the Pac-12.
For killing the conference, it made things easier for the Arizona schools for sure.
Yeah. And so that was something, but we knew that Arizona had been admitted Thursday.
And see, that's the thing, too, that I think people keep forgetting about all of this is that, and again, I totally understand what President Robbins has to do. You got to play the game. You don't want to burn those bridges. But Arizona applied and was admitted Thursday night. So that is something that happened. There's, that's irrefutable right there. And, you can say what you want, but at the end of the day, I think Arizona always knew that they were going to end up in the Big 12, and they did. Now, wanted to have you on to talk a little bit about, because Baylor has, again, I was looking at the top 5 programs in the nation for football and basketball the last 10 years or so. And Baylor, I don't care where you rank them, they're clearly in the top 5, somewhere in there.
I think top 10 is easily said during that time. I mean, top 5, you're getting, that's some high cotton right there. I mean, to go into that. I mean, so for a Baylor person to hear that, or Baylor people that are listening to that, I mean, that's a huge praise.
But I'll give you this. So you won a national championship. You've had multiple number 1 seeds. By the way, next time you talk with Scheer, give him grief about Scott Drew, because he did not believe Scott Drew was a good coach until he won a national title. So again, Scheer was wrong on that one right there, in which I give him a lot
Scott
of.
Drew can't coach crowd. We got it.
Yes. But you look at it, though, what impresses me about Baylor, though, is that this is a 3-coach school, or this is a 3-coach school at this point, because obviously you had Art Briles that had a run of success. You had Matt Rule come in, who, by the way, I think is going to kill it at Nebraska. And then obviously you got Aranda in there as well. You got 3 different coaches where you have 3 top 12 finishes on top of what you're doing in basketball. That is a nice little program right there. And I don't mean little in a pejorative sense, that's gone on there. And let me ask you this, especially in the football sense, how has Baylor been able to do that? Because again, it's not like Waco is overflooding with talent right there. How has Baylor been able to do that with football?
I mean, Waco is 100 miles from Dallas, 100 miles from Austin, 180 miles or so from Houston, and it's just far enough away from home for kids that want to play there. And also just the evaluation. Baylor holds 4 to 5 camps every year on campus, and you have 400 kids at that camp. Right. During the Briles era, you could still have satellite camps, and we would travel to all those camps. There'd be 200 kids in East Texas that come in from Louisiana. There'd be 200 kids in Houston, or 300 kids in Houston. So Baylor was building its brand back then, and people know RG3. They know the winning that Baylor's done in Texas and in the national landscape. And then as Aranda has arrived, as Rule's arrived, they reached out into Louisiana. They reached into Mississippi and Georgia as well, and found some other talent. And you're starting to see that. And Baylor, being a private school, it is around 20,000 students now. When I was there, it was about 10,000. So from 1995 to now, it's doubled. And it is it's a pretty decent school. So you're going to get a private education. You're going to get those kind of contacts, outside. I mean, it's really interesting because, with us owning the website, we get to see where the demographics are.
Right.
And it's Houston, Dallas, Austin, Waco. That's where your biggest alumni bases are. So you get those people in, and so they just hear about it. And then also, Baylor right now has been reaching out to Arizona a little bit and taking some talent out of there. It's been interesting to watch.
Right.
And they missed a tight end this year, but he went to Ole Miss. I mean, so that's who they're battling against right now. And it's going to be an interesting time once Texas know you leave and the other 4 schools come in.
What impresses me, too, about what you're able to do and how this pertains to Arizona is Texas is obviously loaded with talent. I mean, you could make the case that obviously, it's the best state in the country as far as producing football talent. Not really breaking any news right there. But what's impressive to me about it, though, is that you can find so many 3-star kids that maybe in another state would be that high-level 4-star, would be that mid-level 4-star. But there is such a gargantuan amount of talent there in Texas that if you have an eye for recruiting, you can figure it out. And again, my mom was born and raised in Nebraska, so I've kept a pretty close eye on Matt Rule. And Matt Rule has talked about Texas, and he's brought in a couple 4-star kids already in this class. And he said, when you're dealing with a state like Texas, there's going to be a couple hundred kids at least each year that are going to be that can be Power 5 contributors. It's not just the 5-star kids. You got to be able to trust your scouting department, because he said that Texas is where it's at. And I'm excited to see what Arizona can do there, because obviously Baylor's been able to operate off that template, because there is a ton of talent there in Texas.
I mean, even in basketball. I mean, go look at what Baylor's done with basketball with the kids. I mean, just with Keontae George being a first-round pick out of Louisville, even though he went to, went off to a prep school. There is a ton of talent in basketball, football, and 24, 25 million people in Texas now are going to be growing to the 30 million range, by 2030, 2031. There are a ton of families moving in as well. It's really interesting where I live. The high school team has 4 kids that all have high D1 offers on the O-line.
Right.
And they spent $45 million on the football stadium. So I can see it from my house. And so when I go into the second story of my house and look out, I can look over and see the stadium. I hear it at night, when they're practicing. And that's not slowing down in Texas. Football is a religion here. Everyone loves it. And it's, you can really throw a rock and hit a kid that's, 5'11" to 6'1" running a 4.5. Right. It is what it is. And the competition nature of Texas, of people in Texas, with track as well. So you get a lot of kids that run track and want to talk about it. So you see the true speed out there with those kids. And it's similar to Florida in that way.
Right. All right. Let's talk a little bit of basketball here and what they've been able to do, because, all right, Jacob Franklin, our esteemed producer, wants me to get 2 reads out of the way right here. We got to pay the bills here first. All right. BetMGM. Now, if you wanted to bet on sustained success in the Big 12, you might want to go with Scott Drew. Jason Shear might disagree. Actually, he would agree right now. Scott Drew, and we're going to talk about the template, because Scott Drew actually had a Tucsonan run in the point guard position a couple years ago in Lester Medford. But sign up for BetMGM, use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona audience, place your first bet and receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets. Check out the show notes for full details. Keep in mind, I will say that I think Arizona's going to get over 5 wins this year. We told you last year, take the over 2.5. We have different expectations over here when it comes to football. So take the over on that. Let's hear Shane Diefenbach with the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-522-4700 Nevada. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Kansas, Nevada, New York, or Ontario.
All right, and then one more right here. And then Jacob Franklin needs one more right here. Our esteemed 6'9" producer back there. All right, Wink Here's the deal. A seltzer with a wink of THC. Get it? All right. Available in either 2.5 milligrams or 5 milligram cans. You can find Wink, W-Y-N-K, right here in Arizona. Look for Wink at all Sunday Goods dispensaries in the Valley and Botanica dispensary in Tucson. They're now in 12 states nationwide and even recently launched online ordering and home delivery to with about a dozen others. To find the fastest way to get your hands on one, check drinkwink.com. Okay, Scott Drew. And again, what's fun about Scott Drew is that Sheer and I have had this ongoing debate for about 15 years with Scott Drew. I thought I'd settled about 15 years ago when he made 2 Elite Eights in 3 years, but I guess it didn't. What you're able to do at Baylor, though, is Scott Drew has a template in play right there. And it's an interesting template because a lot of times you'll get the junior college transfer guards, which you rely on. Again, our guy Lester Medford, Kenny Cherry. You can go even recently with James Akinjo from Arizona. You can get the 5-star kid in there like the Quincy Millers of the world. But then there's always the Rico Gathers, the Quincy Aces, guys like that. There is a real template there to win at Baylor. And that's why I think it's been so successful and the structure that Scott Drew has been able to go with.
Yeah, I agree. It's been something that, we got up and close with when we did a documentary after the national championship. And we did a couple things like with Scott, to help promote the documentary and just getting to know him a little closer. He is as genuinely, a great of a guy as you're going to run into. There was never a day I've ever walked into his office and said, "Hey, coach, do you mind helping us with this?" After, going through the right processes, and him just, be beaming to help and just that positive light. He has, and I think that's what feeds into his system, and just why the kids want to play for him so hard, and it's interesting to watch. We had a good relationship with Jerome Tang as well. And he's doing that now at Kansas State, and you have Paul Mills at Wichita State, and you have Grant McCaslin now at Texas Tech. His tree is just feeding out. I think we figure, John Jacobs and Alvin Brooks will be the next two.
Right.
And once somebody comes in there, which we don't want to see them leave because we really like them. We didn't want to see Coach Tang leave either. And but they do have a program and they have a formula what they look for. And this year, and Ashley, who you covered our basketball team for us, she's in France with the team right now, covering them. And Yves Messi,
right,
that kid is going to be legit.
Right.
And so is and Jacoby Walter. And they're both freshmen, and Missy reclassified,
right,
and he's doing things that you don't see a 6'11", 7-footer do usually. So we sort of have heightened expectations now what this team is going to do compared to thinking, Jaden Nunn coming in and those guys coming in and give them a little bit of experience. So they have the experience, and the guys have been hardened by being in the tournament, and now this uber athleticism coming in as well behind them. And so it's going to be an exciting time. And with the new stadium.
For sure. We got a question here from Andy Bryant for Brian. He says, Brian, compare the collapse of the Big 12 to the collapse of the Southwestern Conference. Do you think that both conferences had too many teams in pro markets? What say you, Brian?
That was my senior year at Baylor. That was 1995.
Right.
So we went through it, and we got to see how it was so regionalized in the Southwest Conference at that time that it was very difficult to pay for just that. You didn't have Oklahoma and Oklahoma State or Kansas or K-State in there. It was so many Texas schools, and just not happening there. Rice, SMU, TCU, Baylor, that's 4 privates. And if you've seen or been in Rice has an incredible education, but you can count the people at the stadium.
Right.
Even back then, you could count them. SMU would be 12,000 people, and it'd be 9,000 people from Baylor or so. I'm going to catch some hate from SMU people. They're all 3 fans, but that's what it is.
I still don't believe that SMU fans exist. We had to keep hearing this Pac-12 propaganda about how they can load the stadium. There's all these big donors. I have never met an SMU fan in person. Have you, Brian, in the state of Texas, met a real SMU fan?
I know one of the guys that was disassociated from SMU during the cheating scandal. So I do know. And again, we live here in Dallas. We know people. We have, and you have the banner. I mean, just a back and forth. And when Baylor played SMU, I think in 13, and SMU actually opened Baylor's new football stadium in 14.
Right.
So, and when George Bush was there and the governor was there and everything, and so we have you have that relationship still from the Southwest Conference, but there was always the friction of what they did in the 1980s. And, the guy who got dissociated is a great friend of mine. And we talk, and he messaged me today asking, what's going on with this ACC stuff. And I was like, to me, SMU has a great PR department that's able to get their name out in front, but just not happening. And, that's come out recently, that doesn't look like that's going to happen for SMU. And they have a solid program. And I have good friends that, that played there, have, kids that we covered that went there and graduated and have great degrees, but it's just not, it doesn't move the needle in Dallas. They're 7th or 8th in the Metroplex, behind the Cowboys, Longhorns, the Aggies. Right. You just start naming down, and then you go, oh, SMU. Right. With Rice is the same thing in Houston. It is what it is.
Let's talk a little bit about the Big 12 then and how Arizona fits in, because again, I think it's a very natural fit right here, because you've obviously got a big fan base here in Tucson. You've got not only and obviously really care about basketball. Big 12 is the best conference in the country when it comes to basketball. And in football, I'm going to be honest with you. I know it's not the SEC, but I find the Big 12 to be an impossibly fascinating conference to watch when it comes to football. And I think the newcomers are going to bring a little bit of a new juju to it. But I'm stoked, and I think it's a natural fit for Arizona fans.
I agree. I mean, I think Arizona is actually closer to Texas than LA, right? Or it's closer than Washington. Right. So you're going to be able to get across there. I mean, and I'm a little strange on this. I drive to Vegas once a year for a conference. I take the drive so I can go out through Arizona and Utah and hit every national park I can. Right. And so to me, I think Arizona fans are going to have the same experience that way. Sometimes driving into Tech or driving into Waco or driving in. I mean, it's a day and a half. It's not that terrible. It's there's some lonely places across New Mexico, but it's not like it's you still get the beauty of the red desert. And but yeah, I do think it is. And we've been talking about this. TCU beat the champion of the Big Ten last year. Right. Baylor, won the Sugar Bowl the year before. Oklahoma State won the Fiesta Bowl the year before. Right. And everybody goes, well, Texas and OU leaving. Well, Texas and OU haven't represented the Big 12 in the Big 12 championship in the past 2 years. Right. Texas hasn't been there, since 18, I believe it was. Right. And OU was there in 20 during the COVID season, and in 19 when Baylor played and lost to OU. So the power transition in the Big 12 has started to happen a little bit during that time. You add in Arizona State, and Colorado rebuilding. Utah is a great program. Baylor will play them on the 9th of September. So you're going to see that. And then you bring in the Cincinnati, who's had, the CFP
was in the playoffs a few years ago.
Correct. The UCF, their 2017
I think Houston's got a lot of upward mobility there as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot to be excited about there in the future for sure.
Yeah, BYU has been, considered a Power 5, even though we're independent. So they're going to bring a ton of fans and a ton of excitement. And last year in Provo, we had a great time. Right. Except for the outcome of the game if you're a Baylor fan. Right. So it's great to see that. And it's not really going to be something that a step down. I don't really see it as a step down outside of money from the Big Ten.
No, for sure. I think I speak for a lot of Arizona fans. We are incredibly excited to be here. And Brian Ethridge from Sikkim365.com. Brian, again, really appreciate your time, my guy, giving us a little bit of knowledge on what we're going to be walking into in a year.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on.
All right. He's Brian Ethridge. Thanks again, my guy. Appreciate you. All right. Now, we're going to talk a lot of U of A football right here. We're going to go position by position right here and talk about everything that's going on with Arizona. But first, got to pay a few of the bills right here. And let's see, where do we want to bill? What bills should we pay here first? And I am going to go with Shady Rays. All right. Now, you might look at me and you might say, Mike Luke, not a cool dude. You'd be right. Shady Rays, though, has me covered, and it makes me look cooler than I ever should look. All right, so check it out. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code word PHNX for 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. And there's no other time to become a PHNX diehard. All right, now you might say, Mike, what does that entail? Well, thanks for asking right there. The first thing is become a diehard today. Check out phnxlocker.com to grab your membership to receive exclusive content, discounts on all events and merch, and access to our Discord chats. It's a ton of fun. This is the place you want to be. All right, now we're going to go position by position right here with Arizona football. We got to talk a lot about what's going on. First, at the quarterback position right here. 2 observations here. No, Jaden DeLaura, Rich Carrillo's guy, has been he's been kind of an improved version of last year. He's been good. He's been very good, but it's been kind of an up and down type roller coaster for him. Some picks, some mistakes, but he's also capable, obviously, of some really big things out there. Noah Fafita, my guy. Huge on Noah Fafita. I believe Noah Fafita is going to be the starting quarterback at the U of A next year. He's been very solid. Everything you want from him, he has been able to give. Again, I think that's your QB of the future, and I think Arizona fans should be very excited about that quarterback of the future right there. I don't care how tall he is. I think he's a little bit different. All right, now, looking at the running backs, this is going to be one of the strengths of the team. Now, I know that you got Michael Wiley is not going to do a ton in camp because he's already kind of proven himself. Texas native Michael Wiley, by the way. But after that, obviously, Jonah Coleman is a horse. Then it's going to be I'm going to be interested to see how they put in DJ Williams because, again, when you watch DJ Williams on the practice field, he's clearly the most talented of the 3 backs. It's just you don't know exactly where he fits in there because Michael Wiley is going to be that bell cow. And not only that, you've also got in Jonah Coleman, a dude who's younger, who could be a running back in the future. I don't know exactly where DJ fits in, but DJ is obviously a menace out there, and I think you're going to have to get him some carries. Now, when it comes to a wide receiver then, this is the strength of the team, everybody out there. For all your Big 12 fans, like making fun of Arizona over the years, but here's the deal. Arizona's got about as good a receiving core as there is in the country. First one is Jacob Cowing. Now, many of you might know Jacob Cowing from his time at UTSA, where he put up some very big numbers, came to the U of A, last year caught for over 1,000 yards. He's back for another year. He's been fantastic in practice, and they've talked nonstop about the extra bulk that he's added, a little bit of the extra padding, and I think you're going to see that really materialize into a big season. I don't know what kind of pro prospect he is, but I do believe that he's going to be a pretty good pro. I do believe he will be an NFL player. He is decidedly bigger than he was last year at this time, and that's to be expected. Obviously, Arizona's got a great strength and conditioning coach in Tyler Owens, who's done a very nice job with him. Now, T-Mac, what more do you need to say? You watch T-Mac, he makes a ridiculous catch every single day in practice. If he was to become the best wide receiver in the conference, I don't think that would really surprise anybody. As a matter of fact, I kind of expect him to be the best wide receiver in the conference, or at least in that area right there. He's definitely faster. He's notably faster than he was at this time last year, and he's a lot more comfortable. One player that stuck out a lot we've talked about is Montana Lamonius Craig. You understand now why he was a highly rated kid coming out of high school. He has been absolutely fantastic. That 3-headed receiving core right there is about as good as it gets in the country, and I think it stacks up favorably with about anybody. That's how good they have been. Then A.J. Jones. Now, for people that forget, A.J. Jones is the tallest wide receiver on the team, coming in at about 6'6", ex-UCLA decommit, very fast. He's had a little bit of an issue putting things together, but he's been able to put things together. At least this camp, he had a really, really nice catch the other day, and you could see him on the field there as well. Jedd Fisch has talked multiple times about how he wants to have multiple guys out there on the field at wide receiver, not just the 3 that they did last year at this point. Then at tight end, Tanner McLaughlin's a beast. Tanner McLaughlin is the epitome of Jedd Fisch's ability to be able to scout and find different places that are different avenues to find players. And Tanner McLaughlin has been that guy. Now, a lot of he's kind of one of the proven guys, so you're not really expecting to see a ton out of him in camp. He's obviously bigger, but then on top of that, you got Kean Burnett as well, who is a lot bigger. If you're looking at players that are notably bigger than last year, Kean Burnett is that dude. And not only is Kean Burnett that guy, Kean Burnett probably has about as good an upside as there is out of any of the pass catchers there, if you factor in the tight end position as well. But everybody there, the skill position players for Arizona are about as good as it gets at this point, at least in U of A history. You probably have to go back to about 1998-99 to be able to find something of that ilk right there. Now, by the way, Brad Rich says the upcoming 24 Big 12 football schedule scares me way more than the Big 12 of schedule will be basketball. I agree with you. I think Big 12 football is underrated. That's why we're excited to see this one transform right here. And the O-line, we talked about it yesterday, but the offensive line is kind of like the receiver unit. It doesn't have the depth, but you've got a lot of pros on this offensive line, and it's been a long time since I've been able to look at Arizona offensive line and say, there's a pro, there's a pro, there's a pro, there's a pro. And that's what you got right now. You've got Jordan Morgan, obviously. He's an NFL player. He looks good. He looks ready to rock and roll. I expect him to be 100% here in 24 days or whenever it is. Then, on top of that, Jonas Avenea, I believe, obviously is the best NFL prospect on the team. He's playing tackle. I expect him to excel at tackle. And not only do I expect him to excel at tackle, if he were to become the best lineman in the conference, it would not surprise me. I think that he is that good. And not only do I think that he is that good, I think that he has the capability of being a top 15 pick. That's how good I think he is. He's an impressive guy for sure. And Robert Polito has come in here, and how many times with Robert Polito have we wondered, would he be able to step in and be that guard immediately? And not only has he been able to step in and be that guard immediately, he has, I think he's another guy that's got some NFL ability. He's the biggest dude on the offensive line right now. And when I tell you he's the biggest guy on the offensive line, I mean he's the biggest guy on the line. He is massive. And you can Raymond Polito. I'm sorry, I keep getting mixed up with his pops. But you can see why he was a guy that was committed to Alabama. He's talented, and he's going to be kind of a road grader at that guard position next to Wendell Moe, another player that, just a great Jedd Fisch find right there. One thing about Jedd Fisch is he's able to find players that are under the radar, whether that's Wendell Moe, whether that's Tanner McLaughlin. He has a knack for finding guys that should probably be higher ranked than they are, and for whatever reason they fall through the cracks. Jonas Avenea is another one. Jedd Fisch's ability to be able to look at players and evaluate them is very, very impressive. And not only is it impressive, he's going to be able to really, I think, extrapolate that into Texas as well. Now, at that center position, Josh Baker is solid. Portland Timbers on Wildcat Authority took me to task for downgrading what he's been able to do. I like Josh Baker. I think Josh Baker at that center position is solid. I do apologize. My bad, Josh Baker, on that. But the offense should be fantastic. The offense, it looks every bit the part. And not only does it look every bit the part, it looks like the part where, okay, you're going to be able to do what you need to do out there to score. I think it's going to be a top 4 unit in the conference. I just need the defense to not be terrible. A big part of that is Rayshon's. Also, by the way, Rayshon's Speedy Luke. We've talked about it. Fam, I don't care how it happens. I need Fam to touch the ball 8 to 10 times per game, and I think good things will happen. He's a player that you bring in. You have that kind of reasoning for a reason. All right, now let's move over to the defense, because keep in mind with the defense, like we've been talking about, I just need the defense to be okay. And by okay, if you're the 8th best defense in the conference, that would be a huge win right there. So let's talk about it first. The defensive line, and Brendan Carroll mentioned this before, the defensive line is significantly bigger across the board. Whether you're looking at Manoa, Uiagalelei, Upshaw, I mean, heck, even our guy Deuce Davis, these guys are much, much bigger along that offensive line. And not only are they much bigger, that defensive line, they're going to be able to take up some blocks. They're going to be able to be a little bit of a road grader, for lack of a better term right there. And I think they're going to be able to take up some blocks that they weren't last year. Because, again, last year's team was bigger, but it still wasn't a great – and how do I put this? It still wasn't a unit that I think a lot of folks would say was dynamic. And I'm not saying this is going to be dynamic, but I do believe that you can probably replace Hunter Echols' production there with a Taylor Upshaw. And after that, you just need your big guys to take up some blocks because you've got some linebackers that are pretty good back there. Obviously, Jacob Manu, you can make a case as the best defensive player on the team, and he's shown absolutely nothing to dissuade, I think, anybody from that point of view. I think he's got a very much of a Marcus Bell type feel to it. And when I tell you a Marcus Bell type feel, that is a big compliment right there because Marcus Bell was one of the best linebackers to come through here. But Jacob Manu, again, he's another guy who is indicative of the Jedd Fisch recruiting approach where he doesn't always rely on the highest rated players. He goes for a knack. He goes for players that have the ability to swarm to the ball and can play football. And Jacob Manu, I think, has already been one of Jedd Fisch's best recruiting gets right there. Got to give him a big tip of the cap. Now, Justin Flo, it's kind of hit or miss with Justin Flo. He's a good linebacker, and a buddy of mine said that if he was in 1992-93, he'd be an All-American. But the passing game is not something that he is great at. And it's kind of the reason that I think you're going to see Daniel Haimuli in there because Daniel Haimuli, I think, is better at reading everything involved. There's still going to be a place for Justin Flo. I just don't believe that it's going to be it's kind of that all-conference dynamo that I think a lot of people were hoping. But those are going to kind of be the 3 linebackers. We'll see where Leviticus Sua throws in there. And then at the DB position right here, you got a lot of really tall players right there. Now, you might say to yourself, Mike, could you come up with a nickname? Well, the one nickname I would come with is the Four Peaks. Now, Four Peaks is the official brew of PHNX Sports. Arizona is going to have some very tall tight ends right there. And not only are they going to have, cornerbacks, and not only are they going to be very tall, they are good. But just like Four Peaks, the official brew of PHNX Sports, check it out. Check out Four Peaks Brew or Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest on Arizona's hometown brewery. Must be 21 years or older to drink Four Peaks. Please drink responsibly. Now, again, Four Peaks is, as you know, the official brew of PHNX Sports. It is good stuff right there. Now, let's see here. Yavapai Duke said Manu was not on the board. Tell Jedd observed him in person. That is 100% true right there. And I think that is the difference. Jedd Fisch gets it. He is not above letting people he's not above having people out there know, hey, you guys know a little bit more than me. We're still we're working on all of this. That's where I think it's impressive about all of this. Now, but Four Peaks, the official brew of PHNX Sports. Check it out right there. At the cornerback positions, though, Ephesians Prysock and Takario Davis, I think are going to be your dudes. They're both very long and angular. That is what's impressive about them. You're not going with the 5'11", the 5'10", the 5'9" guys. You're going with guys who are 6'2", 6'3", and just big dudes out there. And something that you generally haven't seen here at the U of A. A lot of times it's been kind of the smaller guys right there. And not only has it been the smaller guys, it's been players that, let's be honest here, they're just not maybe physically that good. Ephesians Prysock has everything needed to be able to be a professional football player. That's how good he is, and he's shown that in camp. I expect him to be one of the best corners in the conference. And Takario Davis, he's still a little stiff in the hips. I hate that term, but it's still he's coming around though. And I think he's going to be a good player for Arizona. Then you look at the safety spot. It's good. It's very, very good. Genesis Smith should have been higher rated than he was. Whenever he does hit the field, he is going to be that starting safety for as long as he can be on the field. That's what he is. He's a big hitter. He's a lot like Adam Hall for Arizona fans out there that maybe remember Adam Hall. Then Isaiah Taylor as well. Isaiah Taylor, Jason Taylor's kid, very, very good. And not only is he very good, he is he's kind of a ball hawk type. Again, another player that was probably a little bit underrated that Jedd Fisch was able to find right there. And then obviously Gunnar Maldonado, he's far more limited than the other two. I'd like to see his role maybe decrease just slightly, but the coaching staff likes him a great deal. And between him and Dalton Johnson, he's been here now for 5 years, but he flashes. He flashed in the spring and he flashed in fall, and I think that's where I think a lot of Arizona fans are excited to see what he could possibly do there on the field. But there's a lot to like about this team, and Jedd Fisch still gets it. Jedd Fisch understands that I need to have a better. I need to have a great offense because again, Arizona should have a great offense, and then defensively. It's going to be a unit that, again, I just need to be somewhere around 8, something like that. Also, I need Speedy Luke to be returning kicks. I do not buy into the argument that you're too small to return kicks. I believe that you need to be returning kicks, and you bring in a player like that to return kicks for a reason. Okay. As always, really appreciate all of you guys right here talking and Brian Ethridge from Baylor 365 Sikkim.com. Fantastic. We're going to be back tomorrow with Saul Bookman. We're going to be breaking down Arizona football and Arizona basketball. Again, we'll talk a little bit of Big 12, but we're going to start transitioning a little bit away from that because the season is coming up here. But I wanted to give everybody there a little bit of a take on just how Arizona has looked in the conference so far, what they've been able to do. Because again, this is a team that, again, I think we're going bowling, and I don't care what anybody says. That's a big move right here for Jedd Fisch and staff. If Jedd Fisch is able to get Arizona into a bowl game, then in year 3, then you're going to have to pay him a lot more money. But appreciate all of your comments right there. Brian Ethridge, appreciate you a ton. We will be back with you tomorrow. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.